In today's video, we're going to unveil the incredible secret of the story of David, a young shepherd boy who, armed only with his faith and a simple sling, faced and defeated the fearsome giant Goliath. Have you ever felt small in the face of a giant challenge? Have you ever felt that your skills aren't enough to overcome difficulties? Then, this video is for you. We'll explore every detail of this legendary battle, from David's arrival on the battlefield, through the meaningful preparation, to the epic confrontation that changed Israel's destiny. After understanding the significance of the story of David and Goliath, you'll realize that any obstacle can be overcome, no matter how big it may seem. Join us for this inspiring story and discover how courage and determination can turn a shepherd into an eternal hero. But before you start, make sure you subscribe to this channel. This motivates us to bring you more and more amazing content about the lessons of the Holy Bible. That said, let's get to the details of today's story. At the beginning of this incredible story, we are introduced to David, a young shepherd from Bethlehem, known for his bravery in protecting his flock of sheep against lions and bears. He is the youngest of Jesse's 8 sons, and although his daily life involves herding sheep and playing the harp, David is about to embark on a journey that will forever change his destiny and the course of Israel's history. One day, Jesse, David's father, calls him with an important mission. He asks David to take supplies, grain, bread, and cheese, to his 3 older brothers who are on the battlefield, serving in King Saul's army. This army is positioned in the valley of Elah, where they face a great threat, the Philistines. Jesse wants news of his sons, and also wants David to deliver these supplies to help them in the midst of the war. With his heart full of concern and hope, David readily obeys. At dawn, David gets up, leaves the sheep in the care of another shepherd, and sets off for the battlefield. He travels with determination, curious and eager to see his brothers and understand more about the battle they face. As he gets closer, he begins to feel the tension in the air, a palpable sense of fear and desperation hanging over the Israelite soldiers. When David arrived at the camp, he was greeted by his brothers. He hands over the supplies and soon starts asking questions about the state of the war. It is then that he hears about the giant Goliath, a Philistine warrior almost 3 meters tall, equipped with heavy armor and an imposing spear. Goliath has a daily habit of coming out of the Philistine camp and challenging the Israelites, mocking them and daring any man to face him in single combat. His voice rumbles through the valley, full of arrogance and contempt, filling the hearts of the Israelite soldiers with fear. As David listens to these reports, Goliath appears once again, repeating his words of derision. He sees the Israelite soldiers retreating, frightened, and feels indignation rise up inside him. How could this uncircumcised Philistine dare to defy the army of the living God? David felt a patriotic fervor and a deep faith in God take hold of his spirit. He can't accept that no one has the courage to face Goliath and defend the honor of Israel and the Lord. This moment, which was initially supposed to be a simple delivery of supplies, becomes the turning point in David's life. He realizes that he is not there just to bring food to his brothers, but to answer a greater call. David, the young shepherd, is about to become a hero, guided by his faith and courage. His heart burns with the desire to defend his people and show that with God, anything is possible. This arrival on the battlefield marks the beginning of an epic journey, where a young man's faith will be tested and his courage will be remembered for generations. Now I want you to imagine the scene. A vast battlefield in the valley of Elah, where the army of Israel and the Philistines face each other, separated by a small stream. In the midst of this tension, Goliath appears, a Philistine warrior of impressive proportions. Almost 3 meters tall, Goliath is a colossus, wearing bronze armor that shines in the sun and wielding a spear that looks more like a tree than a weapon. He is the champion of the Philistines, invincible and intimidating. Every day for 40 consecutive days, Goliath advances through the valley, his thunderous voice echoing through the hills. "Why have you come to position yourselves for battle? Am I not a Philistine and you servants of Saul? Choose a man to come down to me. If he can fight and kill me, we will be his servants. But if I beat him and kill him, you will be our servants and serve us." Goliath's words are full of scorn and contempt, directly challenging the courage of the Israelites and the authority of their God. The soldiers of Israel tremble before this giant. Every time Goliath appears, a chill runs down the spine of the Israelite warriors. No man dares to accept the challenge. Fear and demoralization spread through the Israelite camp, leaving them paralyzed. Goliath's presence is a constant reminder of his overwhelming strength and the apparent impossibility of defeating him. Goliath, confident in his strength and size, laughs at the Israelites' attempts to hide from him. His confidence is unshakable, fueled by the certainty that no one can stand up to him and survive. He knows that his mere presence is enough to hold the Israelites in check, without any real combat being necessary. For Goliath, this is a battle already won, a display of power designed to humiliate his enemies. However, the challenge of Goliath is not just a test of physical strength. It is a test of courage and faith for the entire army of Israel. Every insult and provocation is not just directed at the soldiers, but at the God of Israel himself. Goliath challenges not only men but the Lord himself, calling into question the Lord's divine power and protection. It is against this backdrop of fear and uncertainty that David sees an opportunity. He who arrived on the battlefield as a simple messenger realizes that this is the moment to prove his worth and his faith. For David, Goliath's words are an affront not only to the men of Israel, but to the God he devoutly serves. This young shepherd sees the opportunity to respond to the challenge not with brute force, but with the courage and faith that have always guided his life. David understands that the real battle is not just against the giant of flesh and blood, but against the fear and doubt that paralyze his people. He feels he is being called to show that, with God by his side, any challenge can be overcome, no matter how great the opponent. This is the moment when David prepares to turn fear into faith and defeat into a glorious victory, marking the beginning of an epic journey that will be remembered for generations. David, on seeing the situation and hearing Goliath's defiant words, is indignant at the giant's audacity in insulting the army of the living God. He offered to fight Goliath, declaring his trust in God to give him victory. Even though David is young and inexperienced in battle, he believes that the same faith that helped him protect his sheep from lions and bears will help him defeat the giant. This is the moment when David stands out for his courage and determination. David, upon hearing Goliath's defiant words, feels a fire ignite in his heart. He can't understand how no one in Israel's army dares to face the giant. For David, the issue is not just the physical threat posed by Goliath, but the dishonor he brings by insulting the army of the living God. The Philistine's audacity in challenging and mocking the God of Israel is something David cannot tolerate. He feels it is his duty to defend the honor of his people and his God. While David argues with his brothers and other soldiers, he doesn't hide his indignation. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine to defy the armies of the living God? He asks, with a mixture of incredulity and determination. David's words begin to attract attention in the camp and soon reach the ears of King Saul. The young shepherd is brought before the king, where he expresses his desire to face Goliath. Saul, seeing David's youth and inexperience, initially hesitates but is persuaded by David's unwavering trust in God. David tells King Saul about his experiences as a shepherd, facing lions and bears to protect his sheep. "The Lord who delivered me from the clutches of the lion and the bear will deliver me from the hands of this Philistine," David declares with unbreakable faith. His confidence is not in his own strength or ability, but in the certainty that God is with him. For David, the same faith that sustained him in moments of danger in the shepherd's field is the one that will guide him to victory against Goliath. Saul, impressed by David's conviction, finally agrees and offers his own armor to the young warrior. However, when he puts on Saul's armor, David realizes that it is heavy and clumsy. He decides to take on Goliath with the tools he knows best, his sling and 5 smooth stones he collects from the brook. Armed only with his faith in these simple weapons, David advances to the battlefield. David's courage is evident to all who observe him. This young shepherd, inexperienced in war, walks towards the giant with a determination that inspires and challenges at the same time. His trust in God is what sets him apart from the other soldiers who are paralyzed by fear. David knows that the battle is not only against Goliath, but also against the doubt and fear that afflict his people. He is determined to show that with God at his side, there is no challenge too great. This is the moment when David stands out, not just as a young shepherd, but as a true leader of faith and courage. As he advances towards Goliath, the battlefield falls silent. David's every move is watched with wide eyes by both the soldiers of Israel and the Philistines. To everyone, it seems inconceivable that such a young and apparently defenseless boy would have the audacity to face such a feared giant. After declaring his intention to face Goliath, David is brought before King Saul. The king, initially skeptical when he saw David's youth and stature, questioned how a simple shepherd could defeat such a feared warrior. David, however, speaks with a confidence that can only come from unshakable faith. He recounts his experiences facing lions and bears to protect his flock. "The Lord who delivered me from the clutches of the lion and the bear will deliver me from the hands of this Philistine," David says with conviction. Impressed but still worried, Saul decides to equip David with his own armor. It's heavy, shiny bronze armor made to protect a warrior in combat. David puts on the armor and holds Saul's sword, but soon realizes that he can't move easily. The armor is too heavy, restrictive, and uncomfortable. He tries to walk, but the rigidity of the armor prevents him from moving with the agility he knows he will need. After a few moments of trying, David decides that he can't fight like that. With a calm firmness, David removes Saul's armor and puts aside the royal sword. "I can't carry this because I'm not used to it," he explains. Instead, David chooses to rely on the skills and tools with which he is familiar. He picks up his sling, a simple weapon that he has used many times to protect his sheep. It's a shepherd's tool, but in David's hands, it's an instrument of deadly precision. David walks to a nearby stream and picks out 5 smooth stones. He puts them in his shepherd's bag along with his sling. Each stone represents not just a projectile, but David's faith that God will lead him to victory. David's preparation is simple, but full of symbolism. He doesn't rely on metal armor or sharp swords, but on the confidence that God is on his side. And why are we emphasizing this again? With his sling and stones, David advances towards the battlefield. He knows he doesn't have the physical strength of Goliath, but he is armed with something much more powerful: his unshakable faith in God. This moment of preparation is crucial because it highlights the true nature of David's strength. It is not the strength of a trained warrior, but the courage of someone who fully trusts in God's power. This preparation for battle is more than a simple choice of weapons. It is a declaration of principles. David is showing that true strength comes not from the weapons we use, but from the faith we carry. It's a lesson that resonates through the centuries, reminding us that with God by our side, we can face any challenge, no matter how great it may seem. The moment has finally arrived. David and Goliath meet on the battlefield, the young shepherd from Bethlehem face to face with the fearsome Philistine giant. The contrast between the two is striking. On one side, Goliath, huge and armed with a sword, a spear, and bronze armor that glistens in the sun. On the other, David, a young man with no armor, holding only his sling and a few stones in his pocket. The tension in the air is palpable, with both armies watching in silence, their fates hanging on this single combat. Goliath, with his thunderous voice, looks at David and laughs. "Am I a dog that you should come to me with sticks?" He mocks David, despising his youth and appearance. "Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." His words are full of scorn and arrogant confidence, convinced that victory is inevitable. But David doesn't let himself be shaken. With surprising calm, he replies, "You come against me with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This very day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you and take off your head. And this very day I will give the corpses of the Philistine army to the birds of the air and the beasts of the earth. And all the earth shall know that there is a God in Israel. And all this congregation shall know that the Lord saves, not with sword and not with spear, for the war is the Lord's, and he will deliver you into our hands." David's words are a powerful declaration of faith. He does not rely on his own strength but on the power of God. This is a moment of unparalleled courage, where David demonstrates that his trust is not in weapons or armor, but in divine protection. Every word resounds with a conviction that defies fate itself. Then the moment of confrontation arrived. Goliath, furious, advances towards David, his armor gleaming and his spear ready to strike. David, however, remains calm. He takes one of the smooth stones from his pocket and places it in his sling. With a quick, precise movement, he turns the sling over his head and releases the stone. The stone flies through the air straight at its target. It hits Goliath in the forehead, exactly at the vulnerable point between the helmet and the armor. The impact is instantaneous and devastating. Goliath stops abruptly, his eyes wide with surprise and pain, and then he falls to the ground, dead. A shocked silence overtakes the battlefield. The Israelite and Philistine soldiers stood motionless, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. The invincible giant had been defeated by a young shepherd, armed only with a stone and a sling. David's faith and courage had triumphed over Goliath's brute strength. David runs up to Goliath's body, grabs the giant's own sword, and with one final blow cuts off his head. He raises Goliath's head for all to see, an incontrovertible proof of victory. The Philistines, stunned and terrified, retreat in panic. The Israelites, inspired by David's courage, shout in triumph and advance, pursuing the Philistines and securing a complete victory. This epic confrontation is not just a military victory, but a demonstration of the power of faith. David proved that with God on his side, no giant is too big to defeat. His courage and trust in God transformed a shepherd into a hero and changed Israel's destiny. This is the essence of the climax of the story of David and Goliath, the victory of faith and courage over strength and fear. With Goliath dead at David's feet, the battlefield is filled with a stunned silence. The Philistines, who had placed all their trust in the invincible strength of their champion, now stare in horror at the fallen body of Goliath. Fear spreads among them like wildfire. Without their giant to lead them, the Philistines panic and begin to retreat in disarray. The Israelites, on the other hand, are overcome by a wave of euphoria and renewed courage. The young shepherd boy, who arrived on the battlefield bringing supplies for his brothers, now stands as an unlikely hero. David's victory over Goliath is not just a physical victory, but a spiritual and moral triumph that inspires the entire army of Israel. "Forward!" shouts an Israelite soldier, and soon all of Israel's warriors are in pursuit of the Philistines. The battle, which had begun with fear and uncertainty, now turns into a vigorous chase. The Israelites defeat the Philistines, scattering them and securing a complete victory. The battlefield, which had witnessed so many insults and challenges, is now the scene of a celebration of faith and courage. David is taken back to the Israelite camp with acclamations. He is received as a hero, and his feat is quickly spread throughout the kingdom. King Saul, who had initially doubted David's ability, now recognizes God's hand on the young shepherd. "Who is this young man?" asked Saul, impressed. David is introduced to the king, and his simplicity and humility only increase his charisma. The victory over Goliath marks the beginning of David's meteoric rise. He becomes not only a war hero, but also a living symbol of faith and courage. News of his victory spreads quickly, and soon all of Israel knows David's name. He gains the respect and admiration of the people and the soldiers, and his influence begins to grow. David is invited to serve at Saul's court, where his bravery and skills quickly make him stand out. He becomes close friends with Jonathan, Saul's son, and his talent as a warrior and leader continues to shine through in various military campaigns. Each victory David wins strengthens his reputation and brings him closer to his destiny. But David's rise is not just a series of military victories. He is a man of deep faith, and his relationship with God is central to all his actions. David writes psalms that express his trust in God, his gratitude for the blessings he has received, and his continual search for divine guidance. He becomes an example of how to live a life dedicated to God, even in the midst of challenges and adversity. Eventually, David's journey leads him to the throne of Israel. After many trials and conflicts, he is anointed king, fulfilling God's promise. As king, David continues to show his leadership and faith, unifying the nation and establishing a kingdom that will become a landmark in Israel's history. The story of David and Goliath is more than just an account of an ancient battle. It is an eternal testimony to the power of faith and courage. It teaches us that, with God by our side, even the smallest man can overcome the greatest challenges. David, the young shepherd who defeated a giant, continues to inspire generations to believe that, with faith and determination, any obstacle can be overcome. His life is a shining example that true strength comes from an unshakable trust in God. Write in the comments what you learned today, and how life, faith in God, and David's courage can help you overcome the giants in your life. If you like this video, leave a like so that you can cooperate directly in the production of more content like this. Now here on the right-hand side, a video will appear in which I tell the whole detailed story of David. If it interests you, click on it and be overwhelmed by the profound knowledge and wisdom that this story can give you. See you in the next video.